Hi, and welcome to another AHA Ask Heather Anything. Heather's here with us. Hi, Heather. How are you? Great to taking time out of your day to do this. First of all, I want to tell everybody out there, thank you so much for your interaction. Our Facebook private group is starting to get some wonderful momentum. Everybody reaching out and being so loving and supportive to our fellow IBS people dealing with it through life. So thank you for that. Thanks for chiming in and giving your 2 cents in and your experience. That's what this forum is really about. And we have Heather here to keep us all on track because Heather's been doing this for 40 years, has proven solutions that's been working for her, and also been sharing with her customers and just seeing testimony after testimony of things working. So I'm going to get right to it and ask some questions. And some of these are a little repetitive. However, I want you all to hear Heather's input on that in regards to living with IBS. So here's a fun one. Here was a question that was asked in the forum. Does anyone have a trick they use while having IBS-D flares? Question mark. So while it is going on, and I know you've touched a little bit on it before, Heather, but just what would be a bag full of tricks when someone's dealing with it?
If you just have regular grocery store tea bags, use 4 or 5 to a cup, brew it as strong as you can. I think of this really as my medicine for IBS. If you can get that into your system as fast as possible, it'll help stop the spasms and cramps as fast as possible. Peppermint's a smooth muscle relaxant. It's actually a painkiller. Methyl salicylate is an ingredient in one of the volatile oils that literally is a painkiller. You can chew Altoids, mints, anything and everything that gets peppermint in your system quickly. Direct heat on your lower abdomen can help relax the muscles as well. Sometimes people find that hot packs can help with this pain and spasms very quickly. Any form of meditation, if people are familiar with that, sometimes people are able to actually go into a sort of meditation or start doing deep breathing. That can really help slow down the spasms and the cramps. If you have medical marijuana in your area, that can be an option for very fast relief. It's a powerful antispasmodic and painkiller. There's prescriptions, antispasmodics, things like Bentyl, Levsin, hyoscyamine. They don't work super fast. If you have an empty stomach, they might kick in maybe 15 to 30 minutes. So not nearly as fast as something like peppermint tea or chewing Altoids or direct heat. But the more weapons that you have in your arsenal for IBS, the better.
And you actually just tapped on some other questions that have come up during this past week in regards to peppermint. And you just tapped on it, but I want you to clarify a little bit more in detail because people are talking about like, what is the difference between Heather's tummy tea, the peppermint, versus over the counter, something that you would get at the supermarket?
Well, use what you've got. If all you have in the house is just plain old peppermint tea bags or whatever, use what you've got. Just realize that you're trying to not really brew a nice, enjoyable cup of tea here for the afternoon. That's not your goal. Okay. You are trying to get as much of the volatile oils from peppermint leaf into your gut, into your system as fast as possible. So you want the highest possible volatile oil content. So you want large peppermint leaf. You don't want a tea bag cut where the leaves are all broken down into little dust so the volatile oils have dissipated. Right. You want a really large quantity. You want a tea bag that's got like 1 or 2 tablespoons per bag, or brew loose tea from large peppermint leaf. Okay. You want to leave it in the tea cup the whole time that you're brewing it. Just let it sit there the whole time you're drinking it. Okay. It can't get too strong. So, you can control how strong peppermint brews as well by how much water is in it and how long your brew time is. So make it as concentrated as you can. If you're in the midst of an attack, you can't breathe, you need help like right now, brew it as strong as possible. It's hard to do with smaller amounts of peppermint, with lower grade peppermint, with lower volatile oil peppermint. You got to keep it as strong and as concentrated as possible so it will work as quickly as possible. So yes, there is a big difference between something like the peppermint tummy tea that is specifically meant for helping people with IBS versus just a grocery store box of tea bags. But it's better than nothing. Use what you've got.
Right, exactly. And sometimes that's just the case, especially if you're
out
and
use
about.
What you've got.
Exactly. Great answer to that. Thank you for clarification. I'm going to jump into, this is something that hasn't been on the forum that I haven't seen. And the question is for women, do symptoms become worse during menstruation or is it not? So do you have any insight in regards to the IBS with the menstruation?
Yeah, there's actually a lot of clinical research on this. So on the research library section of our message boards, there's a whole entire division of that is about gender hormones and IBS because they know that hormones play a role. They don't understand all the details of it, but there is definitely, it's not even evidence, just so much as a fact of the disorder at this point, that any type of hormonal fluctuation can affect IBS for better or worse. It can go in either way, and that is unpredictable.
Right, depends on what the hormone level is
It
doing at
depends on
that
the hormone
specific
fluctuation,
moment.
depends on the woman. Yeah, it just really depends. But pregnancy, menopause, hormonal birth control, just normal menstrual cycle, anything that influences your hormones can affect IBS. And it is very common that IBS gets worse right at the beginning of a woman's period. That's a really super common thing to happen.
Okay.
And it is the hormonal fluctuation that is doing that. And then on top of it, if somebody is prone to menstrual cramps, that can just set off IBS, and IBS can then make cramps worse. So then you can be sort of in just a cycle of lower abdominal pain hell, and you can't even identify the source of it. It's just one big giant, muscle spasm throughout your entire gut. So yeah, that's a really, really common problem.
Okay. So that's valid, obviously. And of course, it's the trial and error that they're going through to figuring out what's triggering it. Here is another question. I actually like this question. I like them all, but this is really neat. Janet asked, is being on acacia powder a lifetime thing?
Well, probably, because IBS is a lifetime thing.
Right.
Yeah, they don't have any cures for it at this point. It's a disorder, so all that you can do is manage the symptoms. Most of the ways that you're going to manage the symptoms include, using something like the acacia, the tummy fiber, a soluble fiber supplement. They only work when they're physically present in your gut. So if they're not there, they're not going to help you. If you still have IBS as an underlying disorder, you are always going to need that help. So yes, common sense is that you are going to have to keep taking your steps to treat and prevent IBS symptoms as long as you have the disorder, which for most people seems to be pretty much forever.
Right. And instead of looking at it as, oh goodness, I have to do it, versus, hey, there's something that's going to help my gut throughout this. So it's actually a positive thing.
It is a positive thing. It's something that you can do every single day to know that you are going to keep yourself from getting sick.
Absolutely.
Here's what I can do today to make sure that I keep feeling well. I stay healthy. I can go out and about and go to school. That's right. Wonderful. I can go to work. I can live my life. And it's something that only has good side effects, which is also great. It's not like having to take a serious drug with long-term side effects and you're stuck with it every day forever. That's not the case. A lot of things you do for IBS will help other aspects of your health and your body as well.
Beautiful. Love it. Another topic that was going through the thread this past week was, and it's been there before, but this just recently surfaced, about enzymes for bloating. So a lot of people had a lot of different things to say about it. Let's talk about enzymes for bloating. What is your take on taking different enzymes? And then what is your take on that?
Digestive enzymes can't hurt. They can only help. They're totally safe. They've been around forever. So there's no real downside to them. There's no real logical reason that they would drastically help any IBS symptoms because people with IBS, by definition, are not lacking any of their natural enzymes. So there's no problem with malabsorption of foods. But on the other hand, it's something that may help you. So I would tell people to try it, try a variety of different ones. That's something where if you read the ingredients, just about all enzymes are going to have the same basic ingredients. So that's something where I wouldn't splurge on a very expensive brand of that. Read the ingredients. You're probably getting the exact same thing in just about every variety because it is such a common product that's been out for so long. But it can't hurt. It might help. If you try it and it helps you, then keep using it. There's no risk or detriment to that at all.
Great. Good input on that. Another back and forth conversation is the question is, which tea is best to drink at night, peppermint or fennel?
I would key that more to your symptoms.
Okay.
Peppermint is best for pain, spasms, cramps. Fennel is best for bloating and gas. They are both going to overlap to some extent, and you can brew them in the same cup if you wish. I find peppermint to be very calming and soothing, so I would prefer that. If you're struggling more with bloating or gas, I would go to fennel. You could also add chamomile into the mix. Chamomile is helpful for GI symptoms and IBS, and it has a bit of a sedative effect for some people. So you may notice that, you may not. So there's nothing wrong with adding some chamomile into your peppermint or fennel at night for hopefully a little extra help going to sleep.
Right. Perfect. And again, it's all about testing to see how your body responds. And of course, depending on what symptoms that you're dealing with specifically for that day. And as most of us know, each day can be something different. It doesn't necessarily mean we're dealing with the same thing every single day. So we have here, in regards to the teas, because that seemed to be a lot of discussion going on this past week. Really specifically on the fennel tea, somebody was asking, hey, it upsets their stomach, but then there was a lot of people chiming in, not me, so it depends on the person. But is there anything to do with the temperature of the teas, be it peppermint or fennel, or does it matter, or does it matter between the two of them? Hot versus room temperature versus cold?
Well, what matters most is that you brew it with freshly boiled water.
Okay.
So that's what's going to extract the volatile oils.
Okay.
So just like you would brew any other tea bag, you want to do that with freshly boiled water. Let it steep in the hot water. At that point, if you want to drink it while it's still hot, that can have additional benefits sometimes, and that heat is a smooth muscle relaxant. So it may be more soothing to have a hot liquid. If you want to let it cool down, that's fine. Just leave the tea bag in the whole time so it keeps brewing, and then you can drink it at room temperature. Once it's brewed, if you wanted to chill it, you could. You could drink it iced if you want. Just be aware that for some people, having an ice cold liquid, especially on an empty stomach or especially when they're in the midst of attacks, it's like putting something cold on your bare leg. It'll make your muscle contract. So it can do the same thing with internal muscle. So just be aware of that. It's probably most soothing as a hot liquid. If it works better for you as a cooler cold, it's not going to make a difference in terms of the volatile oils that are in the teas that are actively helping your symptoms.
Okay, because that was the discussion was going into that category of, how does the oil extract and how does it affect your body? But then again, everybody responds differently. So what?
And once you've extracted the volatile oils, that's what matters. And then how you use the tea is up to you. So it helps a lot for people to keep their eye on the big picture and then find their own little details in between. So there's a lot of shades of gray, but it's not that everybody is so radically different. I don't know what's going to help you because you're unique. That's not really the case. IBS is not that unique. It's an established disorder with a set of symptoms and underlying diagnostic criteria. If you fit within that category, there's a lot of things you can have confidence in will help you. Shades of gray within that, but in terms of the big picture, there's a lot of things that you can say emphatically are true or not true about IBS across the board. So don't feel like you're just all alone with no help because everything is so individual, you don't know where to start. That's just going to make you feel lost. Don't feel lost. You're not lost.
Beautiful. And as if you notice, when y'all chime in, somebody out there is going through exactly the same thing you are. It's great to see that, and I'm reading constantly, oh goodness, I'm not the only one. You are not the only one.
Yeah, you're not.
We have an army, here with you. Now, Heather, I'm going to go over 3 more questions, and these are questions that came in. We put an announcement saying, hey, we're about to do our AHA, so thank you all for chiming in with your questions. So we're going to get these in here for you. And I'm going to read this out from Cheryl. It says, I have been taking a cashew fiber for a couple of months, and now I'm at a dose of 2 tablespoons a day. That seems to have settled my gut well, period. However, on Sunday, I had a D flare-up. Only later, 24 hours, but still unsettling. Trying to determine why. 2 possible causes. I missed a dosage of one of the fibers on Friday morning by accident, or I didn't drink enough water in the 24-hour preceding the flare-up. Is there a common formula of how much water to drink per tablespoon of fiber? I don't want to float away, but I also don't want more flare-ups. What do you do if you ever miss a dosage again? ? Do I need to start over and increase a half a teaspoon at a time? ?
No, 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 no. If you've just missed a dose, the best thing is just to take it again as soon as you realize you've missed it.
Okay.
If you don't realize it until it's already the next day or something, just start right back up. You don't have to start from scratch. You'd have to be
Okay.
off fiber for a while before you would lose what your gut has gotten used to from the ramped up increases.
Okay.
So, yeah, if you miss a dose, just take one as soon as you remember. There's really no set amount that you have to take with the tummy fiber as a soluble fiber supplement. There are other fiber supplements where that's not the case because they have a high viscosity. So they get very thick in liquid. They can coat your throat. You can choke. So you have to have a large glass of water with things like psyllium.
Okay.
That's not the case for the tummy fiber because there's no viscosity. So
Right.
once you have it liquefied, it's not going to thicken up. There's no choking risk. You could dissolve it in just enough water to get it to liquefy, like you would dissolve cornstarch. You can actually just add the dry powder to moist
Yes.
foods. You don't have to liquefy it at all. Or if you want to have a full glass of water with it, you can. That's just fine. What's going to matter most to your gut is that there's enough water in your gut throughout the day so that the soluble fiber in your gut can work properly. But you don't have to have a huge glass of water right with the tummy fiber for it to work.
No, and if you've ever had it, and y'all that have been out there are such fans of it, if you haven't, it just dissolves so fast. It's not even funny how fast it just.
It works really well to just sprinkle it into moist foods. I think
I
that's
love it.
my
Love
favorite
it.
way to use it.
Yes.
But in regards to then her having an attack and having a setback, I don't think that would be related to how much water you drank or didn't
Okay.
drink throughout the day, unless maybe you got seriously dehydrated. But if you missed a dose, yeah, that could, because you're at 2 tablespoons a day, 6 grams per tablespoon. So you missed a chunk of your daily soluble fiber right there with that missed dose. Particularly if you maybe had something that was a little too high fat to eat afterwards, or too high in soluble fiber, or something was a little stressful that day, that certainly could have set it off. So that's okay. You know what to do to get back on track. Have your dose as fast as possible. Drop down to your plain soluble fiber foods. Have your strong peppermint or fennel. Go easy on yourself. You can try to ID what happened. If you can't, that's okay. Sometimes it's out of the blue. So what's most important is you gather yourself back together and move on and get under control again.
Just get back on track, and you know what's been working.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
that's the good
Yep.
news.
You were stable before. You'll get there again.
Yep, absolutely. And then we have, you've answered this question, this next question here. This is a little twist to it though. It's about eggs. It says, what is a good substitute when cooking? I can't have any eggs, or D, acts up. So I know you've stated to avoid the egg yolk and just double up on the egg whites. But if somebody just says, look, I can't even have any part of the egg in there, what would you recommend for a
Was
substitute?
it just eggs or something else? She can't have any eggs and
Just-
what was the rest of that?
Just or if she has any, like an egg yolk or an egg white, her D will flare up. So if something's asking for
Diarrhea
an
will
egg,
flare up?
yeah,
Okay. It depends on what you're making. And people sometimes have allergies to things like eggs they have to combine with their IBS restrictions. So really, eggs are used as binders when you're cooking, and they're used for leavening and some baking. So there's no straightforward answer here because it depends on what you're making and what you need as a substitute for those eggs. Are you replacing the fat or the protein? Is it the binding effect? You may want to actually look at something like a vegan cookbook or a vegan bakery book to see what they're substituting for eggs in the baked goods. Baking gets very tricky with the chemistry. So in some things you can substitute a little unsweetened applesauce to replace an egg. In other things that won't work.
Right.
There's some recipes where you can just omit the eggs and it won't make a difference. And there's other recipes where that wouldn't work either. So this is going to depend a little on what you're making and what you're trying to accomplish. Silken tofu, little mashed silken tofu, especially if you drain it a little bit so you get excess liquid out of it, that can sub for eggs in some kinds of savory recipes.
What about flaxseed?
Some people use that, very finely ground flax powder. It kind of has some of the emulsifying properties. That's going to get you extra insoluble fiber. I haven't really experimented with that. So again, that's going to depend on the type of recipe. If you are making some kind of bread, that's going to be very different than if you're making some kind of pasta dish and you just need to thicken the sauce a little.
So when you're dealing with the vegan, be careful of that because there's a lot of insoluble fiber that they use to get the binding and stuff. So That's a whole nother ballpark.
It depends on what they're substituting for. There's a lot of egg substitutes, but they're going to vary depending on the type of recipe that you're making.
Okay,
So that's
great.
going to be more almost a recipe specific question than a general food question.
Great. And speaking of food, and this will be the last one, and they just popped into our live feed here, so thank you for that. And it says, what is your take on corn in general?
Corn?
With IBS.
Corn is really high in soluble fiber. Anybody who's had popcorn knows that. The hulls, the kernel part, that is just straight insoluble fiber. That can be really hard. It's a powerful GI stimulant. Insoluble fiber does not dissolve in water. It's not really broken down very well by your gut. So be super, super cautious with popcorn, kernel corn, corn on the cob. If that is pulverized, if corn has turned into cornmeal or polenta, things like corn cereal, corn checks, corn flour, that tends to be much, much easier on the gut. And there is a lot of soluble fiber in corn as well. So once you pulverize the insoluble fiber and kind of minimize that risk, the soluble fiber is going to be helpful. Wonderful. So things like cornmeal or polenta, baked corn chips, corn tortillas, corn cereals, those can be pretty good, safe staples. Be really careful with whole kernel corn, though.
Okay, good. Yeah, I don't see much talk about that on the site, but they just popped in. They're here for our live feed, so I wanted to throw that in there. And of course, you have the cookbook that has been a wonderful help for so many people, and it is on our site here. And we'll go ahead and put the link there because that's always a question is about the food.
Yeah.
Exactly. So again, Heather, I just want to thank you so much for taking time to share your knowledge with us, just, hands-on. And everyone out there, thank you so much for asking your questions and of course, the support you have for one another. And remember, when you read somebody's post, it is just, take it with caution, just take it in and then just see how that affects you. It doesn't mean you have to do everything everybody's recommending you to do or you'll be overwhelmed. And, we're just out there to support one another and know that you are not alone in this IBS world. So we're glad that you're here with us.